Different proposition for most people.
Well, you can buy this thing, and we actually bought one at our old flat. It's like a little bait station, and Doc uses them. And there's bait that slow releases over 6 months. The rats are attracted to it. They stick their little head up, and it triggers the release of a ball bearing, which just gets them in the head, and then their little body is usually taken away by a cat. So, you never really even have to deal with it.
You must have methods or need methods on the farm, Andrew.
Yeah, I've got one of those in the calf shed, and have bait stations around the place, and then there's always the 12 gauge.
Indeed. The trusty 12 gauge. The organisation PETA, we meant to mention this yesterday, but I'll do it today, says teachers need to tenderise our language for children by discarding metaphors and sayings that perpetuate violence, like kill 2 birds with 1 stone, flog a dead horse, and bring home the bacon. While these phrases may seem harmless, they carry meaning and can send mixed signals about the relationship between humans and animals and can normalise abuse. So instead of kill 2 birds with 1 stone, it's feed 2 birds with 1 scone. Instead of hold your horses, it's hold the phone. Is there anything wrong with holding horses? Is that oppression?
So.
Is that oppression?
Yeah, I'm kind of convinced that PETA is just like some long, performance art that we're all going to be pranked. We're all being pranked by.
Yeah.
You shouldn't say open a can of worms. You should bring home the bagels instead of bring home the bacon. Not everybody likes bagels, do they?
Yeah, I mean, PETA just loves to grab a headline with this ridiculous stuff, Who seriously thinks?
Don't feed a fed horse.
Yeah.
What else can I ask you about? The child ban, actually, today, the Nelson, because that's been in the news a bit, the Nelson Cafe owner not wanting children in his cafe, purportedly serves the best burger in New Zealand, and children under 12 not welcome, or was it under 14? No, under 12. Anyone under 18 must be accompanied by a parent. Do you think, he's certainly within his rights to do it, I suppose, but do you think this is a good idea or not?
It's an individual business decision, I guess, and if his market is sort of upscale people without children, then that makes perfect sense for him. End of the day, it's private property. He's got his rights that he can do it. Obviously I wouldn't be I'm not allowed to take my daughters there, but then it might be even when they're older and they're over 12, I'd be like, well, stuff you didn't let me in the door when they were a year younger, so I'm not going there now. And that's my choice as well.
Yeah, and that's the other question, isn't it? How would you feel if you're the parent of quite well-behaved children who aren't going to run amok in his cafe? Yeah,
and I mean, that's the challenge. How can you work out at the door who's got the good kids and who's got the little rat bags?
Yeah, I think I always get a little bit annoyed at some of the reaction to these stories, because some people seem to think it's very sort of edgy and cool to say how awful children are. Children are part of our society,
Yes.
Personally, I really like kids, so I can't really understand putting that kind of blanket ban on them.
Thank you both. Hawks, the best way to stop sparrows. Bring back the shop cat. People are not short of advice about how to control sparrows at Pack and Safe. Andrew Hoggard, thank you for coming in with us again today on the panel. Nice to hear from you. And Tess Nichol, nice to see you again after all this time.
Thank you. Nice to see you too, Jim.
And that's us for the day. Thanks for your company, everybody. We are back tomorrow. And Lisa Owen and Checkpoint coming right up.
Te whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. You're listening to Checkpoint. I'm Lisa Owen. You can also watch us live on Facebook, Freeview Channel 50, and on Face TV Sky Channel 83. On tonight's program, ructions tonight over poaching in schoolboy rugby. Nearly a dozen Auckland schools are boycotting games with St Kentigern College First 15 after it's accused of coaching their players over with scholarships. St Kent's denies the allegations. So is it a case of buying a win or talented players simply chasing the best opportunities? Hundreds of Northlanders line up to be vaccinated in a bid to stop the deadly meningococcal outbreak, and it's temper tantrums in Parliament as a cluster of National MPs walk out.
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, good afternoon. Ko Katrina Bat in Aho. The police can't confirm whether a woman who died following a pursuit this morning was pregnant. A female passenger and the male driver were killed in the crash in the Christchurch suburb of Bromley, and another person is in hospital. An eyewitness says he heard the survivor yelling for his pregnant partner to be freed from the car. Superintendent Lane Todd says the people are yet to be identified and a post-mortem is to be conducted. He says he's confident his officers followed the right process.
What I would reiterate that this was an extremely short pursuit and that the officers self-abandoned based on the risk. So from that perspective, I'm satisfied that they put that through the risk assessment and made the right decision.
Lane Todd says the pursuit lasted less than 1 minute and has been looked into by the Independent Police Conduct Authority. Tensions in Parliament boiled over this afternoon with the opposition leader booted out of question time for questioning the conduct of the Speaker. That prompted most of the National Caucus to follow, albeit slowly. They trickled out of the House over 30 minutes after Simon Bridges and Jerry Brownlee had been ejected. The National leader had made a comment following a series of questions to the Prime Minister on convicted drug smuggler Carol Schrubeck. He implied the Speaker Trevor Mallard was jumping to Jacinda Ardern's defence. She rejects any accusations she's not fronting questions on the matter. Mr Mallard has declined to comment. The results of a new survey suggest more than 2/3 of teenagers have been exposed to pornography and 1 in 4 have seen it by the age of 12. Boys are more likely to see porn earlier and to view it more often than girls, but girls are also exposed often at a young age. And it said regular porn viewers use it as a learning tool. That's something the Children's Minister Tracy Martin is worried about.
If this is the healthy relationship education that our young people are getting because we're doing a not good enough job somewhere else, then yes, we should expect that to continue and to grow in this country.
The Children's Minister Tracy Martin. The Census Office surveyed more than 2,000 people aged between 14 and 17. A Northland doctor says he's buoyed by the turnout for vaccinations in the far north today, but is continuing to see the toll meningococcal disease is having on people in the region. Clinics for vaccinations of the Men-W strand opened today, and hundreds of people queued despite the bad weather. Te Manu Korohi reporter John Boynton was there.
Dr Joel Pirini is positive the clinics will reach the community. Clinics in the 3 main centres of Whangarei, Kirikiri and Te Kaitaia gave the vaccinations, and Dr Pirini was especially pleased with the number of young children brought in. Dr Pirini says he sees people who have contracted the disease suffering from learning and developmental issues. And he backs the vaccination clinics the Northland District Health Board has rolled out for the next 3 weeks. He kaitaia ko John Boynton aho.
St Kentigern College is defending its actions after the 11 other secondary schools in the Auckland First 15 rugby competition said they won't play it next year because it poaches elite players. St Kent's has admitted 5 senior players from First 15s outside the Auckland region will be bolstering its squad in 2019. But its principal, David Hodge, denies they actively recruit anyone.
We accept applications to come to the college, and we have dozens and dozens of applications every year, and of those we take a handful.
David Hodge from St Kentigern. Wild weather has caused flooding, power outages and damaged roads across the lower South Island today. Emergency services and council crews have been stretched, as Tess Brunton reports.
Southland roads bore the brunt with several bridges underwater, slips and road closures. The NZTA has 30km/h speed restrictions in place for some highways near Lumsden, Mataura, Five Rivers and Winton. Lumsden recorded about 51mm in 24 hours, while more than 80mm fell on the Hokanui forest. In Otago, more than 350 people on the Otago Peninsula have been without power since 10 o'clock this morning. Aurora Energy hopes the power will be returned by 6 o'clock this evening. Ko Tess Brunton, tēnei.
Another Auckland vehicle inspector has been suspended by the Transport Agency. The agency is about to contact almost 2,500 people who had their cars checked by Patrick R. Wong at Super Cheap Tyres and Auto Services in St John's. Sarah Robson has more.
The Transport Agency says Mr Wong has a long history of non-compliance. It says a review found that he was not properly inspecting vehicle interiors, seatbelts, lighting systems and brakes. People whose vehicles have a current warrant of fitness issued by Mr Wong are being urged to get their vehicles rechecked. The agency says while it's unaware of specific concerns with individual vehicles, there's a risk some may have been incorrectly passed because of the poor quality of the inspections. So far, about a dozen vehicle inspectors have been suspended, resulting in over 20,000 vehicles needing to be rechecked. Ko Sarah Robson, aho.
It's 5.5 past 5. Sport, early wickets will be key for New Zealand on day 3 of the third and deciding cricket test against Pakistan in Dubai. The hosts will resume their first innings on 139 for 3, trailing the Black Caps by 135 runs. But with the pitch deteriorating, wicketkeeper BJ Watling is optimistic New Zealand can come away with a significant first innings lead.
They've managed to get off to a decent start, but we are 2 or 3 wickets away from putting them under a lot of pressure. There's a long way to go in this game. It's now going to be day 3, day 4, day 5. We know it can be slow going for the first couple of days here, and a lot can happen in days 4 and 5. So, we are here to play the long game, and hopefully we can put some pressure on them.
BJ Watling, the series is level at 1 test all. The New Zealand shot put star Dame Valerie Adams says pregnancy won't stop her from competing at the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. Dame Valerie is currently in Monaco for the IAAF's annual awards. The 34-year-old said on the event's red carpet that bouncing back from pregnancy is tough, but with her second child due in April, she feels she has enough time to prepare.
I've got 15 months to train up for Tokyo, which is great. The first time when I had my first baby, I had 6 months from where to go to get to Commonwealth Games. So it's doable. We've got the blueprint ready to rock and roll, so we'll see how it goes. But I'm looking forward to the challenge.
Dame Valerie Adams. The Liverpool football manager Jurgen Klopp has been fined $15,000 for running onto the pitch to hug his team's goalkeeper after Liverpool scored a last-gasp win over Everton. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Simon Morris makes the most of movies on offer ahead of the school holidays. James Nkise eats fried chicken in the shower with journalist Leonie Hayden, which will go nicely with a window on the world of meat and the debate over how much of that we should consume. And Chris Westbury on why some words are just funnier than others. On Nights with me, Brian Crump. Well, that's a laugh for a start. After the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Met Service weather through to midnight tomorrow, Northland to the Kapiti coast, including the central high country. Occasional showers, especially tomorrow, when some could be heavy with possible thunderstorms and hail. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay fine today, showers tomorrow, some heavy with isolated thunderstorms and hail during the afternoon and evening. Wide at Upper Wellington and Marlborough, showers becoming widespread late today or overnight, then gradually clearing tomorrow afternoon. Severe northwest gales easing late today. For Nelson and Buller, periods of rain today with heavy falls, scattered showers tomorrow, especially in the afternoon when some could be heavy and thundery with hail. For Westland and Fiordland, showers mostly from Hokitika northwards, clearing tomorrow, then mainly fine. Canterbury, Otago and Southland, showers with heavy falls and hail, gradually clearing tomorrow morning and becoming mainly fine. And for the Chatham Islands, fine today, a few showers tomorrow. It's 5:08 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Thanks, Katrina. I'm Lisa Owen. This next story I know is going to, get you all going. So in advance, you can get in touch on the text 2101 on the text, or you can email us at checkpointrnz or reach us on Facebook. This is a story about 11 Auckland school principals who say they will boycott major private school St Kentigern College in next year's premier rugby competition because it has recruited players from outside of Auckland. Now, a series of signed letters by the principals dating back to November outline concerns about St Kent's recruitment. The 11 principals say they all agreed to rules and conduct around poaching players, but St Kent's has refused to sign it and refused to stop. But as Tom Furley reports, St Kentigern says it's played by the rules.
St Kentigern College in Pakuranga has a fierce reputation in schoolboy rugby, taking out numerous back-to-back 1A titles and the World Youth Tournament in 2013. But it's the school's approach to recruiting players from other First 15s, often on scholarships, that has other principals up in arms. A group of 10 principals have agreed they'll now refuse to play them in the 2019 competition.
We'll inform them in plenty of time that we withdraw from that match.
That's Miles Hogarty, principal of De La Salle College. He's one of the 10 signatories in a series of letters to St Kentigern College published today, raising issue with the school's recruitment of rugby players from other schools. After a meeting last month with St Kentigern staff, including its First 15 coach, the principals were concerned that 5 senior students had been enrolled at St Kentigern from other schools, like Napier Boys High School, Whangarei Boys High School and Rotorua Boys High School for the 2019 season. They told St Kentigern College's head of school, David Hodge, that they felt this was against the spirit of the 1A competition and the underlying purpose of competitive schoolboy sport.
I think it's just come to a point where the principals have thought, well, that's enough. And if we don't make a stand, if we don't make a united decision to see if we can clean that up a bit, then it will continue to go on.
He said the boycott had also been endorsed by principals outside of Auckland who had complained their players were also being recruited. Another member of the group, Mount Albert Grammar School principal Patrick Drum, says while there are already bylaws in place under college sport, the principals want a more moral and ethical discussion.
You know, we brought it out of that sort of litigious environment and into a more ethical discussion about, you know, what's the right thing about school sport, what is school sport really about, and what are our schools about. And it's certainly not about a win-at-all-cost attitude.
The head of St Kentigern, David Hodge, says the college doesn't actively recruit players, but because of its rugby offerings is often approached by players and their families.
I believe that they're punishing us because we have a tremendous player development program which extends way beyond rugby.
Mr Hodge says the principals shouldn't be punishing the students who have acted in good faith.
We've assured them, given them an absolute assurance that we have abided by all of the rules and regulations. We understand why they're there. We've absolutely done that. We've asked if they've got any evidence to the contrary to table it. They haven't, and that's very, very disappointing.
He says the sport's national body should intervene to get things sorted as soon as possible.
We've asked College Sport, who actually run the competition, and the New Zealand Rugby Union, who obviously have an interest in it, to intervene, and we hope that there can be a successful resolution.
College Sport is yet to respond for requests by Checkpoint for comment. NZ Rugby also declined to comment. For Checkpoint, Tom Furley.
And in the past few minutes, our producer Bridget Burke has spoken to the CEO of College Sport, Jim Lonergan. He says that David Hodge from St Kentigern College has asked him to intervene because he's concerned the proposed action of a boycott next year falls outside college sports rules. Mr Lonergan has told us he has received legal advice not to comment while he investigates. So, should schools be able to poach First 15 players from other schools and offer scholarships as incentives? Herschel Fruin runs the website hstop200.com, which ranks schoolboy rugby and basketball players throughout the country. St Kentigern features prominently with the top 20, with Herschel ranking its players 1st, 3rd, 6th and 13th. Herschel Fruin told me a short time ago, if a boy dreams of being an All Black, a scholarship is a great opportunity, and St Kentigern isn't the only school making offers.
I personally see it as a good thing. I see it from a perspective of a boy and their parents, and I see it as a way for a boy to see a better path for the career that he wants to take in life. Some kids want to be lawyers, some kids want to be doctors, some kids want to be, architects or engineers. Some kids want to be rugby players. And that's where we're at right now, is that these kids and the parents want a better pathway for them to be rugby players and to make it. And so these are the ways that are the best to get there right now.
Okay, so what about kids who've been at St Kent's for their whole school career and they might want to play on the team, but St Kent's is looking elsewhere for players from other teams? Is that fair?
yeah, if you want to win and you want to be the best, and that's what scholarships are for. Scholarships, if no school wanted to do anything like that, they wouldn't have opportunities to give sports scholarships. Sports scholarships are there, and it's given by the board and by the school for that exact reason. It's not to help out a great guy or a nice kid or a kid that helps old people. It's for a kid who is talented at rugby that can lift their program.
That sounds pretty cutthroat, is it?
No, because that's what it's there for. I mean, I think it would be cutthroat if you don't have something set aside for that, and you're taking it from the maths department to put into rugby. That's pretty cutthroat. But schools have that set aside for that sport, whether it be rugby, basketball, hockey, or even educational scholarships. The money is always there to increase your school's chances to thrive at whatever you want to go for.
But do these private schools have an advantage in that respect? The suggestion may be that they have more resources to set aside to get these players, so they get the best players because they got the most money.
Well, see, even saying the best players there is not necessarily true either, because not the best players get recruited by one school or by 5 schools, because every school in New Zealand can compete. People think that just because they go to one certain school that they're the best player in that position. The New Zealand secondary school selection and barbarian selection proves that alone, that they're not the best person in that position. So to say that someone is the best player going to the best school is not right at all. And it's not right to say that a private school does that, because there's a lot of private schools that are terrible at rugby, and they've got the scholarships to get the best rugby players, and it doesn't work. So it's not necessarily just buying a player or scholarshiping a player. It's got a lot to do with everything about it.
So why is St Kitts, I mean, if I look at your rankings, St Kitts you've got as the #1 team on your list, and you've got 4 out of 20 of the top players are St Kitts players. Why? Why are they at the top of the list?
Because they have recruited really well, and kids want to go to that school. Remember, a scholarship is something that is offered. It's not something that is forced. So for you to offer me something, like you're offering me this interview, I could say no. But at the same time, if a kid is offered something, they get to decide whether they want to or not. Kids are just deciding that they want to go to St Kinnigan's.
I mean, how early are these kids being picked up? What age? Year 8? Year 9? When would they be identified?
Not year 8 or year 9. Like, I start identifying players when they were in year 11, year 10 and year 11. And that's more just out of a raw talent kind of situation where I think, wow, he was a great player. He was probably the best on the field by then, and I'll just talk about him. Other people as well will probably see kids at tournaments, or like when you go to Roller Mills or Ames or what's the other one, Ross Shield, and like little competitions like that deal with intermediate kids. If they get seen, they get seen. So yeah.
So I mean, your basic position is that why shouldn't these kids maximise what they are good at and have the best opportunities available to them? So these schools that are saying that they're going to boycott playing St Kitts over this issue, is that just sour grapes on their part?
I feel like they're looking at it from a long-term perspective. They're looking at it from that perspective. Like, none of these schools have restrictions on who they can't go after, because Auckland Grammar has guys from outside of Auckland. Mags have guys outside. Sacred Heart, they've got guys from. These schools have guys from overseas in different islands. So, like, that's not what I think these guys are having a go at. To me, it's just that their perspective is so far that it's like it's not even really showing up on what they're arguing about. They're talking about the moral part of it, and the integrity of the 1A was like, really, the general public doesn't know what your guys' stance is on that kind of thing. So to argue that is irrelevant, to be honest.
So should it just be banned, this taking players from other schools, offering them scholarships? Make it easy, just ban it.
If they want to do it that way, then that's fine. But then you're not helping out kids. And that's where my perspective, that's where my point of view comes from, is that scholarships are meant to help kids. So these scholarships are set up to help kids. So if these scholarships are all taken away, then these kids actually don't get the help that they need.
Herschel, what's your message to all these schools who are complaining about how the system's working? What do you say to them?
Think of it from a different perspective of the kid and the parents. Remember, like, a school is still going to be around for the next 10, 20 years. That kid that accepted the scholarship, he's thinking about, I'm year 11, I've got year 12 and year 13 next, and I need to be seen because I want to be an All Black. I want to be a professional rugby player. Some kids are not smart. Some kids are not talented in those different areas of what you have in the classroom, but they're really talented when they get on the field, on the basketball court, on the hockey field, on the cricket pitch. So they accept these scholarships for those reasons. We can't expect these kids to all be scholars when they're not. Some people just have different talents.
And that is Herschel Fruin, who runs the website hstop200.com, which ranks schoolboy rugby players. And we'd love to know what you think about this issue. Is it poaching, or is it just offering these kids the best opportunity available? Let us know what you think. You can text us 2101 or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Tensions in Parliament boiled over this afternoon with the opposition leader booted out of the House for questioning the conduct of the Speaker. That prompted the slow departure of most of the National Caucus, who made their way out of the chamber in the half hour following Simon Bridges' ejection. Mr Bridges remains defiant, saying he called out the Speaker, Trevor Mallard, for openly running interference for the Prime Minister. Our political editor, Jane Patterson, was there.
The Speaker has adopted a punishment regime where parties lose valuable supplementary questions for bad behaviour, an approach that has riled those in opposition and tested the relationship with the Speaker. This afternoon, Simon Bridges was running a line of questions to the Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern about the controversy over Czech drug smuggler Karel Schroebrecht.
Has she entirely washed her hands of anything to do with the Schroebrecht fiasco, and is she ducking and diving to get out of its way?
No. The Leader of the Opposition will leave the House.
The Shadow Leader of the House, Jerry Brownlee, was also thrown out, followed in dribs and drabs by the rest of the National Caucus, who decided to walk out, eventually leaving just 5 MPs in the House. Mr Bridges says he was thrown out for saying, "Here comes the protection," referring to the Speaker.
Well, I was asking the Prime Minister serious questions about the Schroebrecht fiasco. She wouldn't answer, and the Speaker leapt to protect her. I called him on it.
It was put to him that would have been seen as a direct challenge to the authority of the Speaker.
You can talk to him about what he thinks. What I've seen is a Prime Minister who for a while now hasn't answered serious questions. Here we're talking about a victim. We're talking about very serious matters that there should be answers to and that she knows about, and she should know about as Prime Minister.
National MP Matt King says he walked out to support his leader.
I just saw that the leader got kicked out, and then the Shadow Leader of the House, Jerry, got kicked out, and I just felt that I would go out in solidarity with him.
The Deputy Prime Minister, Winston Peters, says the MP's walkout was hardly the most demonstrative show of support he's seen for a leader.
Well, what was most damaging was the way they all left after him. They went out in drips and drabs. It looked like the first loyal group and about 6 men out. Then about 12 other side they might be loyal. And then the rest of the side they better show some loyalty as well. So it was seriously disorganised.
Ms Ardern rejects any accusation she's not fronting questions on the matter, and Mr Mallard declined to comment in response to the criticisms levelled at him by Simon Bridges. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Jane Patterson.
Pornography is being described by the Chief Censor as a fact of life, even for children. The Censor's office has surveyed more than 2,000 teenagers for the research project NZ Youth and Porn. 2/3 of those aged 14 to 17 had been exposed to porn, and 1/4 had viewed porn by the age of 12. Charlie Dreber talked to some of the teenagers at the survey's launch and filed this report.
definitely like kind of like lads, you know, like talking about, oh, I saw this cool video last night, or just the whole culture around it. It's really, really normalised, which I don't think is a good thing.
I suppose the pornography culture is very stereotypical, and that the woman is submissive and, you know, the male is dominant. And for young people especially, like, this is seeing that reinforces the fact that that's how they should be in their relationships.
Pornography is now available to teenagers with a few swipes of their smartphones, but some are worried about what the consequences of this easy access is. 72% of the young people who had witnessed porn had seen something that made them feel uncomfortable. In a time where rape culture has been heavily covered in the media, 72% had seen non-consensual activity in the porn they had watched, and 73% of regular porn viewers use it as a learning tool. That's something Children's Minister Tracy Martin is worried about.
If this is the healthy relationship education that our young people are getting because we're doing a not good enough job somewhere else, then yes, we should expect that to continue and to grow in this country.
And as Associate Minister for Education, she believes sex education in schools will need to improve.
I would suggest that while we redevelop that, we need to actually ask our young people what do they need from us and how should it be delivered, rather than once again adults somewhere deciding how that message should be delivered and what that message should be.
Hutt Valley High School has taken education around pornography into their own hands with a play. Student Thomas Avery says the play covers the impact pornography has on teenage relationships.
Teenagers nowadays look at pornography and they see love and romance, which is completely absurd because pornography is in no way a depiction of what a real-life relationship should be. It is misogyny disguised as harmless pleasure. Pornography is just camera angles, lighting and acting.
Teacher Bernard Beckett says the play, which has reached thousands of students, has had brilliant feedback.
The open discussions are remarkable. The thing that comes out of it is we should have huge faith and optimism when it comes to young people, and this report shows that too. They are a remarkably cautious generation, actually, and they are really sensitive to the needs of people around them and are as frightened and as curious and as excited about sex as every other generation has been.
But the Chief Censor, David Shank, says it's not only education that needs to change, but policy.
The key piece of legislation that regulates pornography in this country is the Act that my office administers, an Act that deals with films, videos and publication. The fact that it references videos tells you much of what you need to know about that Act. It's a 1993 piece of legislation that's practically pre-internet. We can do better than that. We can update it and make it fit for purpose.
Most of the teenagers surveyed also agreed access to pornography needs to be restricted. For Checkpoint, Charlie Drever.
Police are defending their actions after a police chase ended with 2 people dead, one who was believed to be pregnant and another in hospital. The car hit a power pole in the Christchurch suburb of Bromley at around 2:30 this morning. Police say the car had only been pursued for 1 minute and crashed a minute after the chase was called off. Rachel Graham has more.
The car crashed at the corner of Breezes and Cuthberts Road, in an area where suburbia meets open fields. Matt Ngātai lives across the road from the crash site and went outside to see what happened after his partner was woken by a bang.
We got out of bed and checked it out, and the police cars were surrounded the site. And then we heard a man yelling, his partner is in the car, she's pregnant. And yeah, the post was over, and yeah, it was pretty chaotic, so yeah.
Superintendent Lane Todd says a female passenger and a male driver were killed in the crash, but they haven't been able to identify them and can't confirm whether the woman was pregnant. Another male passenger was taken to Christchurch Hospital with injuries, which are not life-threatening. Mr Todd says it is incredible that anyone survived the crash.
If you have seen the vehicle itself, it is extremely surprising anyone has survived it. But what it does reiterate, unfortunately for us, we've had another similar incident about a month ago in Christchurch. It does reiterate that people need to stop when they're signalled to stop by police. This is a tragic outcome, and it's the second one we've had within 4 to 5 weeks.
The crash left the car crumpled around a power pole, which was shunted over to a 45-degree angle. Mr Todd says the officers initially tried to pull the car over because of the standard of driving, including speeding and other factors he wouldn't elaborate on.
Police followed the vehicle for less than a minute and then abandoned the pursuit based on the driving of the vehicle involved. Less than 1 minute after police stopped following the vehicle, it was found crashed at the corner of Cuthberts Road and Breezes Road.
Another neighbour to the crash site, Michael Pearce, says the area, which goes from a 50 km/h zone to a stretch of 70 km/h, is a hotspot for people speeding.
That's the second time that power pole's now been hit. In the 5 years that we've been here, that's been replaced twice. People simply enter the 70 zone and they don't change speed. They continue on 70 km/h until they hit the corner. Pretty much every weekend we hear spinning tyres. Boy racers love the street.
Mr Todd says an investigation is underway and the Independent Police Conduct Authority will also look into the police chase. But he says at this stage he is confident the officers made the right decision.
We have a process that our police officers have to follow in relation to that. One of them is doing a risk assessment, and obviously we have the details and information we can get off our communications centre, and that's all part of the investigation. What I would reiterate that this was an extremely short pursuit and that the officers self-abandoned based on the risk. So from that perspective, I'm satisfied that they put that through the risk assessment and made the right decision.
The IPCA launched a review of police pursuits in July 2017, which is due to be completed in February next year. In Christchurch for Checkpoint, Rachel Graham.
Coming up, hundreds of people queue in Northland for a free emergency meningitis vaccine. And as primary school teachers hold out for a better pay deal, our visual journalist Logan Church is in Australia to find out if Kiwi teachers are better off there. Plus, we have the inaugural Checkpoint Sports Quiz. You won't want to miss this. Test your buzzer now. But first, here's Katrina Batten with the headlines.
The opposition leader and National MP Jerry Brownlee were kicked out of Parliament this afternoon after Simon Bridges questioned the Speaker's conduct. Over the following half an hour, the rest of the National Caucus walked out. Simon Bridges was ejected for suggesting the Speaker was protecting the Prime Minister, following questions to Jacinda Ardern about the Czech drug smuggler Karel Schrubeck. St Kentigern is defending its actions after the 11 other secondary schools in Auckland's first 15 rugby competition said they won't play the college next year because it poaches elite players. St Kentigern has admitted 5 senior players from first 15s outside the Auckland region will be bolstering its squad in 2019. But its principal, David Hodge, denies they actively recruit anyone, saying instead they accept a handful of applications to the college each year. The Mount Albert Grammar principal, Patrick Drum, says the door is wide open for St Kentigern to resolve the feud. The police in Christchurch cannot confirm whether a woman who died following a police pursuit in Bromley this morning was pregnant. A female passenger and the male driver were killed in the crash. The other passenger is in hospital with minor injuries. An eyewitness said he heard the survivor yelling for his pregnant partner to be freed from the car. Superintendent Lane Todd says the people are yet to be identified. He says the pursuit lasted less than a minute and his officers followed the correct process. The Transport Minister says the costs of rectifying the warrant of fitness crisis will come out of the Transport Agency's baseline funding at no extra cost to the taxpayer. The Transport Agency has hired outside engineers to go through thousands of vehicle inspection files. Another Auckland vehicle inspector was suspended today, bringing the number of vehicles that need rechecking to more than 20,000. The agency says Patrick R. Wong of Super Cheap Tyres and Auto Services in St John's has a long history of non-compliance. Those are the headlines. I'm back at 6.
Thanks, Katrina. Let's turn now to business with Nona Pelsier. Trade Me. Everyone, it seems, wants to get their hands on it.
I guess so. I mean, look, it's a bit of a cash cow, isn't it? And make people like advertising on Trade Me, and it's got a good reputation, so therefore it's got a couple of bidders now. One of them came forward, I guess, a couple weeks ago, and they'd been doing some due diligence on the company. Trade Me said, well, you know, if somebody else comes to the party, we'll be open to that. And somebody did, with a bit of a better offer by 5 cents a share.
Yeah, because we talked about this, a few days back, and you were telling me that the offer they had on the table was above the odds.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was
$6.40, and that was by Apex. That's a London-based New York company, private equity firm. Another one's come forward. This time it's an American one. The company is called Hellman & Friedman, and they've bettered the offer by 5 cents, which works out to about $20 million. So, and they're looking at the books too. So
the pennies add up when you put it that way, Nona.
And don't worry, Trade Me's still open to more offers if any come. They're not out there looking for new offers, but if some come in the door, the party could get bigger.
But the global market's taken a bit of a tumble. So what? There's signs of bad economic moon on the rise over there?
There's this thing called the inverted yield curve when it talks about... Yes. Everyone's going, what is that? Well, every time I wouldn't say every time we see an inverted curve, we get a recession. But every time we have a recession, we have the inverted curve. So that's always a very bad sign when you see an inverted curve. Now, it's kind of hard to explain, but it basically means that the short-term interest rates are higher than the long-term interest rates, and that's a little bit off. So we actually looked around the world and found ourselves an expert, someone who can actually explain what this means. Yes, don't worry a bit about it. We've got somebody to explain here. And his name is, where's my little document? Oh, here we go.
Drum roll, please.
Drum roll, please. His name is, I've lost my document.
Can I help you out with that?
No, he's the chief market strategist at TD Ameritrade. His name is JJ Kinahan.
Yeah, so it's talking about expectations for where total value will be in the future. When you look at what a yield curve is telling you now as an inversion, we think the Fed is going to cut rates in the future. So you are incentivized as an investor today, counterintuitively, to buy longer duration bonds. I know that feels crazy to say. But by buying a longer term bond, you are coming around to the notion that the Federal Reserve is going to bring risk-free rates lower in the future. So think about that from an average person. The cash return that they're getting in their checking account might be relatively high now, but in the future, the bond market is telling us the Fed is going to lower that rate in the future.
There you go. That's that U.S. market strategist, J.J. Kinahan. Now, it's interesting that this has happened. That means that the Federal Reserve, we've been talking about how U.S. interest rates going up tends to make the U.S. dollar stronger. So that's one aspect. That is already a worrying sign when the U.S. dollar is strong. Put that in line with U.S. trade tariff talks, or not, how sincere is Donald Trump about doing a deal with China? The market's not so sure. I mean, Donald Trump tweeted he was the tariff guy overnight. I mean, what does that mean? I'm the tariff guy. We'll do a deal if it suits us kind of thing. And then on top of that, we've got Brexit. So naturally, the markets have turned pretty scared because nobody knows what's going to happen next. And you can't really trust what's really on the table. I mean,
So what does it look like today then?
Well, we actually ended down actually 1%. That's 84 points. And that was better than we'd started earlier in the day. It was worse to 8,782. The ASX 200 in Australia is also down about 1%. And really all of Asia is looking pretty sad too. The dollar is narrowly mixed. So we are down a bit against the US dollar at 69.1 US cents, just a bit. But we're up against the Australian at 94.8 because they're more affected by international trade than we are. And 54.4 British pence. Again, who knows what's happening with Brexit.
Exactly. Nona, thank you for joining us. That's Nona Pelsier with your business update. Hundreds of people have queued in Northland today where an emergency free vaccination program is being rolled out to combat a deadly meningococcal outbreak. Health authorities hope the 3 vaccination clinics that opened today will be able to vaccinate 25,000 teenagers and children over the next 3 weeks. More than 100 parents and their children turned up this morning to the Kaitaia clinic, which is serving one of the most isolated communities in the region. Our reporter John Boynton is in Kaitaia with visual journalist Dan Cook and filed this report.
On a typically warm north day, a quick burst of traffic breathes life into the main drag of Commerce Street in Kaitaia. In a quiet parking lot, Janet Morunga is sitting in her car, waiting for her daughter-in-law and moko to return from the shops. Miss Morunga knows firsthand the reality of meningococcal.
My daughter had meningitis when she was 3 months old, meningococcal meningitis. And we had complications with my daughter Moana. Took her to the doctor 3 times before they realised that she did have meningococcal, and when we did take her, they had just lost a child at the doctor's.
She says she wants parents to know what's in the vaccine and about the danger of the disease.
There should be something told about if there are side effects for the kids. But I think it's very important that our children and our mokopunas and our great-grandchildren all get done. Don't want to lose any. We don't need to lose any of our tamariki.
Locals we spoke to said the Northland District Health Board's response had been too slow, and they were concerned information about the vaccination program wouldn't reach everyone who needed to know about it.
I think it's kind of been quite a sudden, like all of a sudden this is here, get immunised, and maybe there might not be enough awareness of it, might not be reaching out to sort of further flung communities that might not have access to it.
What have you thought of the DHB's response so far?
I think it's been slow.
Yeah. Why is that?
Well, because we've had 3 deaths, I believe, and so they're a bit behind the ball, you know, with 3 deaths. And as I say, it's been funded in Australia for 3 years now, so we are behind the ball there. I personally hope that parents and whānau do some research, you know, do some research about the pros and the cons of getting vaccinated, and, you know, so it doesn't end in tragedy, I guess. Yeah, just make yourself aware.
The Northland DHB wants to vaccinate 25,000 children for the Men W strand in Northland at a number of clinics in the next 3 weeks. A worldwide shortage of the vaccine means the doses will be limited to those aged from 9 months to 4 years old and 13 to 19. Children between the age of 5 and 13 are not being vaccinated because they're the group less likely to be affected by the disease. But Janet Moringa says life in Kaitaia is tough enough and wants all children to have access to the vaccinations.
How many of these injections are going to be free, and then how much is it going to cost everybody else to get that same injection done? Some of us can't afford it. Not everybody can afford to have this.
This morning at their whare hauora at Kaitaia Hospital, there were more than 100 parents and their children, mostly babies and toddlers, waiting for the clinic to open. Stephanie Vinach was there with her daughter Mila.
I thought I'd get in early, but well, you know, there's a big queue ahead of me, so I think everybody has known and been told about this. I think people are scared at the minute. I think with the deaths locally that everyone's a bit worried. So I've heard that with the herd immunity that everybody can be a bit stronger, and then there's obviously not as many people catching it.
Tui Matthews was also at the clinic with her 3 under 4-year-olds in tow. She found out about the vaccinations from social media.
My main reason was the 3 deaths that we've had in the north. I initially didn't want to go ahead and do it, but I did a bit of research in the vaccinations, thought, yeah, better go ahead and get the kids done.
Although she'd like to see all Northland children vaccinated, she understands the targeted approach.
I understand where they're coming from, trying to stop the carriers from passing it on, and then getting the younger ones to protect them, I suppose. Yeah. So hopefully when that's out of the road, everyone is able to get it all done for free.
As she pushes her pram into the busy clinic, the cries of young children can be heard. The first up for his injection is her son, Robbie. Dr. Joel Pedini from Kaitaia Hospital has seen the devastating impacts meningococcal has had on the community.
The ongoing effects as well. You know, often we see the pictures of the kids who are unwell at the time, but the part you don't see is what happens to those kids going on with their learning, their development, their hearing, and all those kinds of things as well.
Dr. Pedini says there's a number of symptoms parents can look for.
So it's the things like high fevers, a headache, lethargy, a rash, a small baby just being unsettled and not themselves, vomiting, and in terms of Men W itself, it's known to cause a couple of other types of infections, so causing like a stomach infection with vomiting and diarrhoea, and also causing pneumonia as well.
And he backs the vaccination rollout the Northland DHB has set up.
I would encourage all of the people who live north of Kaitaia to talk to their own clinics, make plans to come down here to Kaitaia and have the vaccination done.
Clinics at Kaitaia Hospital will be in place for the next 2 weeks, and further clinics across Northland are open for the next 3 weeks. Mo te hōtaka o te ahi pōnei, ko John Boynton, aho.
We're getting a lot of feedback on a story from earlier in the show, which is about schoolboy rugby, whether it's okay to poach players from other teams using inducements like scholarships. There is a planned boycott by 11 schools in Auckland against St Kentigern's College in next year's competition. They say they won't play St Kent's, alleging that they are poaching players. As I said, a lot of feedback. Neil says, "Hi Lisa, re schoolboy rugby, the private schools should only be able to get players from private schools. Then one day the public schools will win for a change," he says. This one from no name here, but private schools like St Kent's, they say, and King's are recruiting players at year 7 and 8. This is probably fairer than taking 5 boys in year 13, they say. Many schools offer scholarships in other disciplines than sport. Music, for example. If a talented student in a small town has the chance to move to where there are greater opportunities for advancement, why should they be denied that? And this one, I have 2 boys at King's. Most of the parents are pretty fed up with overuse of these scholarships because it means the fee-paying kids who have worked their tails off and worked up through the teams often don't get a shot at the top teams to represent their school. Keep your feedback coming. We have a lot of it and we'll try to get through a bit more later in the show. Primary teachers and principals are determined to hold out for a pay deal that improves their workloads. They say that's the main reason they rejected an Education Ministry offer that the Employment Relations Authority recommended they accept. The offer would have increased most teachers' annual pay from between $9,500 and $11,500 over the next 2 years. But as our education correspondent John Gerritsen reports, some teachers are now thinking of giving up altogether.
Hazel, does your group have a band name? What would you like it to be called?
This is one of Jamie Hoare's last classes as a full-time teacher. With no change to his workload in sight, the Wellington teacher has resigned so he can spend more time with his 1-year-old son.
Often I've been staying until 7, 8 o'clock, writing reports, or trying to get home and spend time with my son, but also having to write reports, plan lessons, write transition notes for kids, etc., etc. One of the, all of the 100 things that need to be done outside of the classroom.
Jamie Hoare says he might well have stayed in his job if the primary teacher's pay dispute had been resolved with a settlement that eased the load.
I think that would have definitely been a factor in my decision. I've been teaching for 8 years now, and it took me 2 or 3 years to realise how enormous and unreasonable the workload is, and there are many parts of teaching that I really, really love, so that's kind of why I've stayed in it for 8 years.
In South Wellington Intermediate staff room, Ella Kilpatrick is coming to the end of her first year as a full-time teacher. She's not surprised that teachers voted to reject the recent pay offer. She personally wants a settlement that will make teaching more attractive.
A lot of beginning teachers, like they're becoming that statistic of the 40% of teachers or beginning teachers that are leaving in the first 5 years of teaching because they've just had a guts full and they're sick of having to fight every day in class, and it's too much for them. A lot of the older teachers in the profession are leaving as well, so we need to really kick things up a notch and save teaching and make it appealing to people to get into the teaching profession.
But the prospect of an improved offer being put on the table is unclear. The Education Ministry has said it wants to keep bargaining, but the deal needs to stay within the current envelope of nearly $700 million over 4 years. Meanwhile, the Secondary Teachers Union announced today its bargaining team has rejected a third offer from the Education Ministry, and the 2 parties are going to mediation. Industrial relations expert Stephen Blumenfeld from Victoria University says public support will be important for the teacher unions, but only if the dispute runs into next year.
With regard to public sector workers, public support is crucial. But likely there will be a settlement sometime in the next few months, both with primary and secondary teachers. And so, the public support probably isn't going to have a whole lot of impact on that outcome at this point in time.
Stephen Blumenfeld says he's surprised the negotiations have not been settled already because the unions have no leverage over the government during the holiday period when schools are shut. Back at South Wellington Intermediate, Ella Kilpatrick says if her pay and workload don't improve, she's likely to start looking for better paid, less stressful work in Australia in a few years' time. Mō te hōtaka o te ahi, ko John Gerritsen tēnei.
So what happens to teachers who do pack their bags and head off overseas in search of greener pastures? Is it really all it's cracked up to be? Our video journalist Logan Church filed this report.
That's Tipi Tahapehi and Nicola Nakamura, teachers at Carlton Public School. It's one of the biggest in the area, with about 900 primary pupils. We're standing in the middle of Tipi's Te Reo classroom. But where exactly is this school? Smack bang in the middle of Sydney. Tipi grew up in Waikato and trained there as a teacher. She worked in New Zealand for almost 2 decades, before moving to Australia with her then teenage son in 2000.
Well, when I started here at Carlton Public School, I was quite scared actually, because when I was teaching in New Zealand, I found it very hard. It wasn't structured. It was we had to make a lot of the resources, and we had a lot of meetings in the holidays. It was quite onerous. It was a lot of pressure was put on teachers.
But what she found in this Sydney school is quite different.
Well, when I started here in my couple of weeks, I felt that the curriculum was more structured. It was easy to follow, and you had colleagues that were here to help you.
In 2000, her starting wage was $50,000 Australian dollars a year. That's more than the new teachers are currently paid in New Zealand, 18 years on.
You know, I don't like to go on about money, but there is a big difference in pay compared to at home.
A shortage of learning support staff has been a big issue in New Zealand, although the government announced last month it would fund 600 new coordinator positions over the next 2 years. But they're not in place yet, unlike at Carlton Public, as reading support teacher Nicola Nakamura explains.
In our school, at every grade, there's a support teacher that works with that grade. In stage 1, there's 2, plus another teacher who also works with other grades, so there's really 3 of us with year 1 and 2. Then 3 and 4, there's other teachers, support teachers. 5 and 6, more support teachers.
But it hasn't always been this easy, and many of the issues that teachers are obsessed about in New Zealand are similar to those faced by their counterparts in Australia decades ago. Sally Hill trained in Wellington in the 1940s and taught for 60 plus years before retiring last year. Most of her career was spent in Australia and had front row seats during one of the country's largest ever teachers' strikes in 1965. Sitting in her dining room in Sydney, she told me what teaching was like before that.
You could actually see holes, cracks in the floors. We had 1 light in the classroom and 30 children. And I mean, that sounds almost like a third world country. And I'm not saying that all schools were like that, but this particular school that I went to, those were the circumstances.
But she says industrial action changed everything. More resources, better infrastructure, better training, and support teachers were introduced.
We even got fans in the classrooms and better lighting and carpets on the floor, which was just almost too much to believe it actually happened. But all of that happened through teachers going on strike.
With more strikes on the horizon in New Zealand, Sally has a clear message for her Kiwi counterparts.
You know, the common saying is the squeaky door gets the most oil. So the louder you speak up, the better it is. The louder you speak up, the more you're going to achieve. You know, don't wait for the government to decide when you need a pay rise. You need to persevere. You need to just keep on with your strike action and continue, because I've seen the benefits.
That report by Logan Church talking to New Zealand teachers in Sydney. Time now for some more feedback on our story about schoolboy rugby poaching. St Kentigern College in Auckland is being accused of poaching other schools' players. This person says, I taught at St Kent's for a long time and had the privilege of working with many of our first 15 boys. For many of them, their lives and the lives of their families are changed forever in a positive way due to the opportunities provided by the college and the increased exposure they get as players. St Kent's changes kids' lives. This one too on our interview with Herschel Fruin on the same topic. All these schools complaining have no pay, no play policies. So kids from low socioeconomic families miss out. Schools like Mags, this person says, has no problem throwing $1,500 basketball bills at parents 2 weeks before national tournaments, telling parents if their kids can't pay, they can't play. Their principal has a cheek complaining about St Kent's. At least scholarships offer a great education and pathway into national selection for free US college educations. Good on you, Kents, they say. Well, every now and then on Checkpoint, we do try and bring you a sports story, and this evening we want to celebrate our sports reporters. 3 of them are finalists in the Radio Sports Journalism Award, part of the 2018 Sir Terry McLean Sports Journalism Awards that are happening tonight in Auckland. So congratulations, Joe, Ravinda and Clay. But here at Checkpoint, we know that sometimes judges do get it wrong, so we wanted to conduct our own investigation. Alex Perrottet put them through their paces.
Thanks, Lisa. Good evening and welcome to the Checkpoint Sports Reporter Quiz. Now, the rules are very, very simple. Each sports reporter has just 60 seconds to answer as many questions as they can correctly. If the contestant does not know the answer to a particular question, they must say pass, and we move very quickly to the next question. Now it's time to meet our sports reporters. Ravinda Hunia is an Auckland-based netball and fighting specialist. She's a national netball player and has also tried her hand at kabaddi and bhangra. Ravinda is absolutely one of our top 3 favourite sports reporters. Clay Wilson, born in Blenheim, Clay plays cricket and hockey. In 2004, he won the Under-18 National Hockey Championship, along with his teammates. Joe Porter, sports reporter, specialising in rugby. Joe hails from Waikanae on the Kapiti coast. Joe shares his name with an English cricketer, an American footballer, as well as a Canadian percussionist. Ravinda Hunia, your time starts now. Which rugby league team has Sean Johnson just signed with?
Cronulla Sharks.
Back in January, which make of car won the Dakar Rally?
Pass.
Peugeot. In tennis, which country won this year's Hopman Cup?
Oh, pass.
Switzerland. In February, the first ever international motorsport competition in Saudi Arabia was held, the 29th Race of Champions in Riyadh. Who won it?
Pass.
That was David Coulthard. Who are the Pro Kabaddi League defending champions?
India.
Patna Pirates. Which country won both men and women's rugby sevens in the USA and Dubai?
Black Ferns?
Yes, well, New Zealand. The New Zealand women's rugby team is called what? The Black Ferns, well done. Who was skipper of the Team New Zealand yacht known as Black Magic in the 1995 America's Cup?
Oh, God damn it. Grant Dalton.
Russell Coates. Who won this year's Women's Hockey World Cup?
Netherlands.
Yes. Where did the New Zealand men's basketball team finish at the 2002 Basketball World Champs in Indianapolis, the USA? That's time. Clay Wilson, your time starts now. When did the New Zealand all-white soccer team make their first appearance in the Soccer World Cup finals?
1980.
No, 82. In October, the 43rd Chess Olympiad was held in which country?
Russia.
Georgia. When will Christchurch's new stadium be built?
2024.
2021. Mark Todd won 2 gold medals in equestrian's individual 3-day event. What was the name of the horse he rode?
Charisma.
Yes. Who lost the FIFA World Cup final this year?
Croatia.
Yes. How many gold medals did swimmer Daniel Loader win at the 1996 Atlanta Olympics?
2.
Yes. How many players in a water polo team?
8.
6. Who won this year's Chicago Marathon for the men?
Eliud Kipchoge.
Mo Farah. Complete the sentence. Grant Dalton is the
CEO of Team New Zealand.
Yes. Which biscuit did All Black coach Steve Hansen promote?
Toffee Pops.
No, Arnott's Tim Tam. This year's Formula 1 Italian and Singapore Grand Prix were won by?
Lewis Hamilton.
Yes. How many medals have Bruce and Barbara Kendall won? 5. Yes. Time's up. That's 60 seconds. Joe Porter, your time starts now. What is the name of the week-long rowing regatta considered the biggest in the Southern Hemisphere?
Mardi Cup.
Who won the 2016 Supreme Halberg Award?
Lisa Carrington.
Yes. At this year's World Rugby Awards, who received the Sevens Player of the Year award?
Pass.
Perry Baker from the USA. Which former Indian cricket captain was last month inducted into the ICC Hall of Fame?
Rahul Dravid.
Yes. Who won this year's Women's Tennis US Open?
Japanese woman who I forget the name of, who beat Serena Williams in the final.
And it's Naomi Osaka. You can't count that though. Which racehorse won the 2015 Melbourne Cup?
Pass.
Prince of Penzance. Who was the jockey, the first ever woman jockey to win the race? Michelle Payne. Where were the 2018 Winter Olympics held?
Pyeongchang.
Yes. Back in January, which country won the men and women's rugby sevens held in Sydney?
Australia.
Yes. Who won the medal count in the 2018 Paralympics?
The United States.
That's right. Back in March, which country won both the men and women's? That's time. We have to leave it there. Thank you for joining us on the Checkpoint Sports Reporter Quiz. We are now tallying the results, and we will have those results for the contestants as well as you, those tuning in, listening or viewing before the end of the program.
RNZ News at 6. Ngā mihi nui, good evening. Ko Katrina Batten tēnei. Civil Defence says there is no tsunami threat to New Zealand following a major earthquake off the east coast of New Caledonia. The undersea quake struck at about 5:20 this afternoon, had a magnitude of 7.6 and was only 10 kilometres deep. There was also a 5.9 aftershock. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Centre says hazardous tsunami waves are possible within 1,000 kilometres of the epicentre along the coasts of Vanuatu and New Caledonia. Officials in New Zealand assessed whether any tsunami could affect this country, but now say no such threat exists. The police can't confirm whether a woman killed in a police pursuit this morning was pregnant. The woman and the male driver were killed in the crash in the Christchurch suburb of Bromley, and another person is in hospital with minor injuries. A resident on Breezes Road, Matt Ngatai, went outside to check out what had happened when he heard the crash.
We got out of bed and checked it out, and the police cars were surrounded the site. And then we heard a man yelling, his partner is in the car, she's pregnant. And yeah, the post was over, and yeah, it was pretty chaotic, so yeah.
A resident of Breezes Road in Bromley, Police Superintendent Lane Todd says the people are yet to be identified and a post-mortem to be conducted. He says he can't give any details about them yet. Tensions in Parliament boiled over this afternoon with the opposition leader booted out of question time for questioning the conduct of the Speaker. That prompted most of the National Caucus to follow, albeit slowly. Here's political reporter Gia Garrick.
National MPs trickled out of the House over the half hour following Simon Bridges and National MP Jerry Brownlee's ejections. It was on the back of a comment by the National leader following a series of questions to the Prime Minister on convicted drug smuggler Carol Srubeck. He said, "Here comes the protection," implying the Speaker Trevor Mallard was jumping to Jacinda Ardern's defence. Ms Ardern rejects any accusations she's not fronting questions on the matter, and Mr Mallard has declined to comment. From Parliament, Gia Garrick.
Teenagers are using pornography as a learning tool, even though more than 70% have come across material that makes them uncomfortable. The Census Office has surveyed more than 2,000 teenagers between 14 and 17 years of age and found 2/3 have been exposed to porn. 72% had seen non-consensual activity in the porn they'd watched. A high school student, Thomas Avery, says there needs to be better education in schools.
I don't think there's even 50% of what we should be doing in schools is being talked about. We need to amp it up so much more, and we have the ability to do so. We have great teachers who are not afraid to sort of pass that boundary and open up this conversation more while still being completely mature about it.
A student, Thomas Avery. St Kentigern College is calling on New Zealand Rugby to help resolve a major feud in Auckland secondary schools rugby. The other 11 schools in the Auckland First 15 competition will boycott St Kentigern next year after the private college admitted it has recruited 5 senior players from First 15s around the country to bolster its squad in 2019. The head of St Kentigern, David Hodge, says the boycott will have an unfair impact on aspiring players.
All of those families, all of those players have acted absolutely in good faith. And so, yes, I would expect that the rugby union have a part to play in resolving this because it's important in terms of their code.
David Hodge from St Kentigern College. The government says the Warrant of fitness crisis is a serious safety risk after another vehicle inspector was suspended today. The Transport Agency says Patrick R. Wong of Super Cheap Tyres and Auto Services in St John's has a long history of non-compliance. His suspension takes to more than 20,000 the number of vehicles that need rechecking.
I've already declared it a serious safety risk. I mean, I've described this as a case of systemic organisational failure. That's what it is. Public confidence has taken a hit, and we're doing everything that we can to put that right.
The Transport Minister, Phil Twyford, the agency has hired outside consultant engineers to go through thousands of vehicle inspection files. Emergency services and council crews have been stretched as heavy rain hit the lower South Island today. On the Otago Peninsula, about 385 residents in Taiaroa Head and Harwood have been without power since this morning. Further south, Hokanui Forest has recorded the highest rainfall with 86 millimetres falling within 24 hours. The heavy rainfall caused flooding and damaged roads across Southland, with several bridges fully submerged during the day. It's 6:05. The Samoan Sevens coach Sir Gordon Titchin says he hasn't talked to any players about switching international allegiance ahead of next year's Rugby World Cup or the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. To switch allegiance, players must complete a 3-year stand-down and compete in 5 tournaments on the World Series 7 circuit, which doubles as an Olympic qualifier. Former All Blacks Ma'anonu, Victor Vitor and Asaya Toiava are among the names being touted who may be interested in reviving their Test careers with Samoa. But Titchins, a former coach of the New Zealand Sevens, says he hasn't spoken with any of them. Ty Wesley has become the second New Zealand breaker to be fined $1,000 following their contentious National Basketball League double-header loss to the Perth Wildcats last month. Wesley was punished for comments made to the referee during the match. Breakers coach Kevin Braswell was previously also fined $1,000 for criticising officials. The world's top 100 women and top 100 men have all confirmed they will compete at next month's Australian Open in Melbourne. Romanian world number 1 Simona Halep heads up the women's field, with Serbian superstar Novak Djokovic the men's top seed and targeting a record 7th Open crown. That's the news.
Going in,
the re-entry will look like a series of shorter re-entries spaced over several hours, several days.
Speaking up.
It was kind of Jekyll and Hyde stuff. It was terrifying at times.
And walking out.
We've had 6 months of no increase and no improvement in workload, and I've got 3 staff leaving because of it.
Listen in. Morning Report with Susie Ferguson and Guy Aspinall, weekdays from 6.
Then on 9 to noon, combating bias in the health service. Can in-depth data analysis help Māori and Pacific communities get better cardiology care? And after 10, the inspirational documentary about a pioneering scheme started in Auckland that cuts through school zone inequality. Join me, Lynn Freeman, in for Catherine Ryan on 9 to noon after Morning Report on RNZ National.
Met Service weather through to midnight tomorrow, Northland to the Kapiti coast, including the central high country. Occasional showers, especially tomorrow, when some could be heavy with thunderstorms and hail. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay find today, showers tomorrow, some heavy with thunderstorms and hail during the afternoon and evening. Wairarapa, Wellington and Marlborough, showers becoming widespread this evening and overnight, then gradually clearing tomorrow afternoon. Northwest gales easing late today. For Nelson and Buller, periods of rain this evening, scattered showers tomorrow, especially in the afternoon, when some could be heavy and thundery with hail. Westland and Fiordland, showers mostly from Hokitika northwards, clearing tomorrow, then mainly fine. Canterbury, Otago and Southland, showers gradually clearing tomorrow morning and becoming mainly fine. And for the Chatham Islands, fine today, a few showers tomorrow. It's 8 minutes past 6 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Thanks, Katrina, and I'm Lisa Owen. Leaks targeting Nationals leader Simon Bridges are apparently continuing to flow out of his own party. RNZ has received another anonymous text message from a person claiming to be a National MP. The texter, who leaked details of the party's internal polling last week, has hit back at Mr Bridges, who denied the leak came from within his caucus. Here's our Deputy Political Editor, Chris Bramwell.
After last week's National Party caucus meeting, RNZ got a text message outlining details of internal polling and claiming a lot of disappointment among caucus members. Simon Bridges said yesterday the leak did not come from the caucus. RNZ has since received another text from the same anonymous person saying Mr Bridges was foolish for thinking the polling leak did not come from a National MP. The texter offered details of what happened in yesterday's caucus meeting as proof they're an MP. RNZ has been unable to verify the texter's identity. Simon Bridges is batting away the latest leak and sticking to his lines repeatedly.
I haven't seen the detail. Look, I'm not concerned about it. We're moving on. Well, as I say, I haven't seen the detail. I'm not concerned about it. I've moved on. Well, as I say, I haven't seen the detail. I'm not concerned about it. I'm moving on. Well, I haven't seen any of that detail. I mean, I think, New Zealanders will understand what's happened over the last couple of months, and they've seen an opposition that's really focused on things that matter to them.
The contents of the anonymous text refer to disquiet in the caucus and talk about Simon Bridges' leadership. A One News Colmar Brunton poll out this week showed Mr Bridges stagnating on 7% in the preferred Prime Minister stakes, just 1 percentage point ahead of Judith Collins. Senior National MP Jerry Brownlee says speculation is most likely to come from outside the caucus.
Simon is very strongly supported by our caucus.
Fellow National MP Michael Woodhouse equally dismissive.
No, it's not even a story.
Alfred Ngaro insists Nationals caucus is not leaking and the MPs are united.
Not at all. I mean, I can speak for myself that it's united, it's strong, it's disciplined, and it's shown itself that we've got confidence. We're polling at 46. That's not a leaky boat.
So do you think this is someone pretending, I guess, to be a National MP?
Yeah, well, I don't know who they are. I'm sort of just focused on the things that, like life jackets, as you'll know, in our communities. I think things that are really important, I'm not going to worry about that sort of stuff.
The New Zealand First MP, Shane Jones, says the sudden flood of National Party leaks gives him deja vu.
That takes me back to the time of Chris Carter, Charles Chevelle, and that was when the vital organs of that phase of the Labour Party begun to stress out and almost perish.
His boss, Winston Peters, says National is in serious trouble.
Well, as I've said for a long time, they're riven with divisions. They're now in a bitter dispute. The leader is not in control, and this is open defiance.
Open defiance or not, in the wake of the Jamie Lee Ross saga, Simon Bridges will be hoping that the leaks start to dry up. Atu i te whare pāri mata mō te hōtaka o te ahi pōnei, ko Chris Bramwell ahau.
Don't panic. That's the message from the Northland DHB after hundreds of people queued up today on the first day of an emergency immunisation program for the new W strain of meningococcal disease. Free immunisations are being offered to everyone aged 9 months to 4 years and teenagers from 13 to 19 years inclusive in Northland. The strain has killed 6 people in the past year, 3 of them in Northland. A DHB spokesperson, Roger Tuck, who's a retired paediatrician, says the vaccine may be in short supply globally, but Northland has enough to vaccinate everyone who's eligible. That's everyone. He spoke to our reporter, Lois Williams.
We have absolutely enough vaccination to vaccinate the entire 2 cohorts that we want to vaccinate. So those people who are, the children who are eligible, we have absolutely plenty. There's no reason to panic. That's against the background of an international shortage of vaccine, and I know that people who've been talking to their general practices have been told that, it's difficult to get hold of the vaccine and people may need to wait. I got one message that one of the practices had said they can't get vaccine because the district health board's cornered it all, and that's absolutely not true. Our bunch of vaccinations are quite separate. And we have not got in the way of general practice getting hold of vaccine if they wanted. But having said that, I think most general practices will tell people they'll might have to wait a wee while to get a privately funded vaccine.
But it will come through.
Yes, oh, absolutely, it will come through. And yeah, I guess my counsel to people is that we really don't need to panic. I mean, we're getting in hopefully at the ground floor here with this outbreak, and it's still a rare disease, albeit a terrifying one. And I think the other message is that if we manage to get most of those two cohorts vaccinated, that's going to have a population effect. So those people who have children in the middle range are going to get a degree of protection from the two immunised cohorts.
A Northland DHB spokesperson Roger Tuck speaking to our Northland reporter Lois Williams. Several hundred children and teenagers have been vaccinated today at community clinics in Kaitaia, Kirikiri and Whangarei. The clinics will remain open over the next 17 days. Theresa May has suffered 3 Brexit defeats in the House of Commons as she sets out to sell her EU deal to sceptical MPs. Ministers have agreed to publish the government's full legal advice on the deal after MPs found them in contempt of Parliament for issuing a summary. And MPs backed calls for the Commons to have a direct say in what happens if Mrs May's deal is rejected next week, and that is looking increasingly likely. For the Prime Minister, it was a political humiliation that does not bode well as the Brexit process begins to unravel. The BBC's Laura Koonsberg reports.
She doesn't want to accept she's defeated. Not yet. But for the first time in decades, before the Prime Minister had even had the chance to speak today, a painful hat-trick.
The ayes to the right, 311. The noes to the left, 293.
Her government was beaten 3 times. Look at them! Look at them! Look at their faces, they cry. The sight of a government that doesn't have support it can rely on. Ministers found in contempt, forced now to publish the full Brexit legal advice.
This House has now spoken, and it's of huge constitutional and political significance. It is, I think, unprecedented for this House to find government ministers in contempt.
In light of the expressed will of the House, we will publish the final and full advice provided by the Attorney-General to Cabinet.
The Attorney-General's private advice to Cabinet will meet the public glare. Then another flank.
Mr Dominic Grieve. The purpose of this amendment is to ensure that if we don't resolve this issue next week, that there will be further amendable motions to be considered.
In other words, former Remain rebels demanded more power for Parliament if Theresa May's deal is rejected next week. An even bigger defeat. More influence for MPs if the government's plan falls. Multiple cabinet ministers say privately there's no way Parliament will back the government. A few brave souls inside think it might be possible. So what's her pitch?
Don't let anyone here think that there's a better deal to be won by shouting louder. Don't imagine that if we vote this down, a different deal is going to miraculously appear. The alternative is uncertainty and risk. So I promise you today, this is the very best deal for the British people. I ask you to back it in the best interests of our constituents and our country. And with my whole heart, I commend this motion to the House.
This ordeal is about endurance as well as ideas and arguments.
To vote for this deal would be to damage our economy, to make our constituents poorer, and to take a leap in the dark for the future of this country. Mr. Speaker, Labour will vote against this deal. A bad deal for Britain, a bad deal for our economy, and, I believe, a bad deal for our democracy. Our country deserves better than this.
But the reason we're here is and always was the tears inside the Tory party, in full display tonight.
I really can't believe that there is a single member of this House who sincerely believes that this deal we have before us is a good deal for the UK.
There are a lot.
And if I may say, you can tell...
But look, there were.
There's one. There's one.
I've got no stake in this government anymore, but I still think it's the right thing to do.
The governing party split in every direction, right in front of our eyes. A week tonight, they'll have to choose which way to go, which corridor to walk through. Is there a real chance of pulling together? Parties divided, Parliament divided, maybe the country too?
Laura Koonsberg reporting there. Republicans are at odds with the Trump administration over the brutal murder of Saudi reporter Jamal Khashoggi, with Donald Trump determined to preserve the relationship with Saudi Arabia as well as lucrative trade deals. But US senators briefed on the murder of the journalist say they're certain the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman was involved. The ABC's Zoe Daniel reports.
Maybe he did, maybe he didn't, Donald Trump said, when asked if MBS or Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman ordered the murder of journalist and critic Jamal Khashoggi inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul in October. After being briefed by the head of the CIA, senators say he did. Senator Bob Corker.
If the Crown Prince went in front of a jury, he would be convicted in 30 minutes.
And Senator Lindsey Graham.
You have to be willfully blind not to come to the conclusion that this was orchestrated and organised by people under the command of MBS and that he was intricately involved in the demise of Mr. Khashoggi.
The Saudi royal family and MBS have denied ordering the murder of Khashoggi, but evidence released by Turkey, including video of a 15-member Saudi hit squad linked to the Crown Prince coming and going from the scene, and a CIA investigation, have senators convinced otherwise. The Trump administration has chosen to point to the lack of a smoking gun in order to keep its relationship with Saudi Arabia and its broader Middle East strategy intact. That's to do with its anti-Iran stance, desire to protect weapons sales and keeping oil prices low. Bob Corker.
MBS killed a journalist. We know he killed a journalist. And that is not acceptable per American standards.
And Lindsey Graham.
Saudi Arabia is a strategic ally, and the relationship is worth saving, but not at all cost. We'll do more damage to our standing in the world and our national security by ignoring MBS than dealing with him.
Lindsey Graham's calling for global sanctions on those responsible, including the Crown Prince, and says he won't continue to support billions in US arms sales to the Saudis, at least not while MBS is in charge.
A Gisborne paddleboarder made a quick escape from the water this morning after seeing what he describes as a 4.5 metre great white shark coming straight towards him. Dave Fagg spotted the shark while out at Makarore Beach near Gisborne just before 8 o'clock this morning. He told reporter Alex Ashton about his close encounter.
I heard a big splash, so I turned around to mark one of the other locals out there. I said, look, keep your eyes peeled. I just heard a big splash. It might be nothing. It might be just, kingfish or something. Probably 15 minutes after that, I caught a wave and I was paddling back out and I saw this probably about 2.5, 3 foot fin, about 100 metres off the beach, and it was coming straight at us. So I spun around and said, look, everyone's got to get out of the water now. There's a shark out here and it's coming towards us. So, and then we all hopped up on the bank and were just checking it out, and a couple of the lady locals saw it again.
Crikey.
And, yeah.
How big do you reckon it was? And what sort of shark do you think?
Well, I'm not a complete 100% sure it was a great white, but it was sort of like greyish, darky greyish colour. I knew it wasn't a mako or anything like that because I've never seen a 15-foot mako. I reckon it was about 15 feet.
15 feet?
By the size of the fin, by the size of the main fin.
God, it must have given you a bit of a fright seeing that.
It wasn't really so much of a fright. I was more concerned about the other people in the water because, like I said, I have had experience with. Like, we've had a couple of close calls with great whites, on the west coast.
So how many of you were out in the water at the time?
Must have been about probably 8 of us.
Oh, so a decent group of you.
Yeah.
So what do you do in that situation? Do you obviously get everyone out of the water, then do you make any calls or report it or anything like that?
Yeah, as soon as I got in, I rang the police just to let them know that what we'd seen.
Oh, wow. So would this have been the biggest one you've seen?
No, I've seen bigger in the boat.
Oh, nice.
When I've been out fishing, I've seen probably, my mate's got a 20-foot aluminium pontoon, one of those baby crafts, and it was slightly bigger than his pontoon.
I wouldn't be laughing if I'd seen that shark. That is Shark Sighter Day Fag speaking to Alex Ashton. The police say they received a report of a large shark but didn't take any action. Don't blame them. A handwritten note about religion penned by the Nobel Prize-winning physicist Albert Einstein has sold at auction in New York for nearly $3 million. The so-called God letter, written in German, was bought by a private collector. The BBC's Andy Beach has the story.
Final call, $2,400,000. Sold.
Polite applause at the sale of a letter by one of the 20th century's greatest minds, grappling not with science, but the concept of religion.
Apologies to God, I think.
The controversial note was written by the Nobel Prize-winning scientist when he was 74, just a year before his death. It's seen as Einstein's clearest statement of his views on philosophy and the meaning of life. The word God, he says, is for me nothing but the expression and product of human weaknesses. The Bible, a collection of venerable but still rather primitive legends. The physicist also muses on his own Jewish identity, writing that it, like all other religions, is an incarnation of primitive superstition. Written to the German philosopher Erich Gutkind, it's seen as a key statement in the debate between science and religion, and it shows another side to the genius whose theory of relativity changed the way we understand the universe. Last time the letter changed hands, in 2010, it sold for $400,000. The price this time, including commission, nearly $2.9 million, twice the estimate.
Well, returning now to our Checkpoint Sports Reporter quiz and the all-important question, who is the winner? Just before 6, Alex Perrottet grilled the 3 contestants who are all finalists in the Radio Sports Journalism Award, part of the 2018 Sir Terry McLean Sports Journalism Awards happening tonight in Auckland. And Alex is back in the studio with me with the results. Alex, what can you tell me?
Well, we were pretty tough on them, weren't we? But it was amazing that it came right down to the wire. You'll notice that one answered a question right on the buzzer.
Yes.
Ravinda got 5 right out of 11 questions. Clay got 6 right out of 12, and Joe got 6 right out of 10. So we have a dead heat here between Clay and Joe.
Right, well, we need to settle this, don't we? So
let's
get the boys on the line. So Joe and Clay are on the line with me now. Gentlemen, good evening. It is a tiebreaker situation. I'm going to explain the rules to you both. It is sudden death. The first person to answer a question correctly is the winner. If you answer incorrectly, your opponent will get the same question. If they answer correctly, they win. No right answer, we progress to the next question. Your buzzer is your name. Your buzzer is your name. You must buzz in before being asked to answer. I'm going to ask you now to test your buzzers. Joe?
Joe.
You, Clay, test your buzzer, please.
Clay.
OK, gentlemen, stand by. The next voice you will hear is Alex Perrottet.
Who won the Hallberg Award in 1985? I can't hear.
We'll assume that is
Clay.
a pass. Oh, no, Clay.
That was the year I was born, Alex. Gosh.
Clay, are you buzzing in?
I'm taking a wild stab and saying Sir John Walker.
Sir John Walker is Clay's answer.
Susan Devoy. Sorry, I should have given it to the other one.
OK, next question.
We have to go to another question.
Next question.
That is my mistake. The next question is, the New Zealand Warriors came second in the NRL in 2011, but they won the minor premiership in which year?
Joe. Clay.
Joe has buzzed in first. What is your answer, Joe?
2009.
2009. Is that the correct answer?
Incorrect.
Incorrect. OK. Clay, you have a chance to snatch this. What is your answer?
Can I have the question repeated? Is that within the rules?
Yes. Repeat the question, please, Quizmaster.
The New Zealand Warriors came second in the NRL in 2011, but they won the minor premiership in which year?
2001.
2001.
Incorrect. It was 2002. We move to, there's time.
Move to a simpler question, Alex
We will go
Pierre.
to an historical one. In which year did Annalise Coburger win New Zealand's first Winter Olympic medal?
Joe.
Clay was first. Your answer, please.
1992.
1992?
Correct.
Yay!
We have a winner.
We have a winner.
Clay Wilson.
Clay Wilson has come through by a whisker, and the prize, Alex, is?
I think the prize is just glory and personal pride. This is a very, very prestigious tournament, and if he can get the double header tonight, he'll be doing even better.
Good luck to you both. That is our two sports reporters, Joe and Clay, who are finalists tonight in the Sports Awards along with Ravinda. Congratulations and good luck. We have just enough time to get to some of your feedback, actually, on a sports story too. Had an overwhelming number of comments from you, and this is on St Kentigern's being accused of poaching schoolboy rugby players for their team. This person, David, who is from Gisborne, he says, "Kia ora, Lisa." Kia ora, David, and a shout out to my old school there, Gisborne Girls High. David says his daughter went to the same school as me. He says that St Kitts needs to take a long look at the mixed messages they send to society. Win at all costs, money will buy you an All Black jersey, loyalty counts for nothing, he says. He says, play for our school for years 10, 11, 12, but in year 13, we will replace you with a pupil from another school. Thank goodness for our local Gisborne Boys High, says David. They grow their own. You will find them in the Super Rugby regional teams, Mitre 10 and All Blacks. Really, it doesn't matter where you milk the cow, says David. The cream will always rise to the top. And this one from someone who has kids at St Kent's School. We support the views of St Kent's. We are lucky indeed to be able to afford this luxury. If a portion of the fees we pay go towards offering scholarships, giving students the chance to shine in rugby or whatever, we are more than happy to keep contributing, they say. Thank you so much for all your feedback. Apologies that we couldn't get to it all this evening. That is Checkpoint for tonight. We'll be back again tomorrow.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The Rugby Union has offered to try and resolve a standoff between Auckland secondary schools over an accusation of player poaching by St Kentigern College. The police cannot confirm whether a woman killed in a police pursuit in Breezes Road in Christchurch this morning was pregnant. The latest suspension of a warrant of fitness inspector in Auckland takes to more than 20,000 the number of vehicles that need rechecking. And Kiwi Build has apologised for offering 5 Auckland homes that failed to sell off the ballot on a first-come, first-served basis instead of to people who entered the ballot but were not picked. Our next news and weather is at 7.
The shadow of your smile when you...
I know you know his voice, but can you put your finger on just who this sultry jazz singer is?